So, doing digital critical skills, methods, and literacies is a course in which students learn computing skills like programming in Python and data science and apply them to traditional humanistic topics about language, reading, and discourse formation. And the upshot of this then is that students both learn a set of concrete technical skills as well as a broader appreciation for key issues in the humanities. In designing the course, my top priority was to avoid having the course be simply a matter of adding digital tools to the typical humanities curriculum. At the same time, I wanted to avoid the impression that what we were doing was updating the humanities for the 21st century as if it had become an outmoded discipline. So instead, I wanted to design the course to achieve a kind of integrated experience in which, transforming the way we ask certain questions in humanities, we were also going to transform the way we thought about the technologies too. On the first day, I started a discussion with the students using an article as a prompt. The article was about efforts in Florida to have computer classes, coding classes, count as foreign language credit. And so I used this to open the question to them, do they think it should count? And in discussing this idea, it inevitably led to the question of, well, what is language exactly? If we're going to say that coding counts for a language credit, then we need to understand what it's counting for exactly. I chose Python because of the programming languages I surveyed. It was the most suited to the aims of my course. In the first place, just the decision to make coding a principal part of the course came from a desire to make the issues of reading, writing, and language as such constantly thematic for us in the class. And I felt that programming would achieve that, and I think it did, because whenever students would engage with a concrete programming exercise, they were inevitably, pushed towards grappling with issues like translation and interpretation, trying to, move from how they normally would think of something being written and read, like a text, a novel, to the way the computer understood text and the way it would read and write text. And so we were always returning to the questions I wanted to raise within the humanistic framework whenever we were engaging with the technologies in this sense. And it was a kind of natural return to it that came up on its own just because of the nature of what we were doing. To just give one concrete example that came up in class, in explaining variable assignments in Python, a variable called tree, for example, could store anything. It could store the name of a human, or it could store a mathematical value. It didn't matter. And it took a while for students to wrap their minds around that there wouldn't be an essential relationship between what the variable is called and what it represented. But because we studied Saussure formally, I was able to explain this as the arbitrariness of the sign, and for a number of them, they were able to understand it through that lens, or alternatively for others, that application in the code made the Saussurean idea clearer as to what it meant to say that the sign is arbitrary. This could be anything, okay? Right. So the beauty of the function here is, in creating this function, the item to count that we put into it and the list we want to search could be anything. It doesn't have to be Anne. It doesn't have to be this Emma text. It could be any list of words that we created and any item to search in it. You know, it's a generalized function. That's the idea of the function, is that it's a generalized application of the principle. You know, that we could count anything with this. Either way, it resulted in a deeper and more expansive engagement in the sort of humanistic questions we were exploring in the class. No, I'd say pretty much all of them, maybe with one or two exceptions, had no background with coding, and none with Python, certainly. So it was all new to them, and you know, it was an interesting experience in that teaching the coding especially would be like teaching a foreign language to students. If I wasn't very careful about the way I even like phrase things or like repeated an idea, it could cause confusions. One of the great things about the game assignment that I've been pleased about is how invested they have become in creating their game. They definitely have not approached that as just a task, because a number of students have really gone well and beyond what I've required. I had one student have code that was like around 800 lines, and that was his own choice, and a number of others really became enthusiastic about doing it. They clearly got some satisfaction from it, and they wanted to know more so that they could get these games to do more complicated things, you know, to kind of match their own imagination. The idea that this could be an interactive game, you know, a genuine game that someone could play, really, really motivated them, because I think they created the games in mind with the idea of someone playing them. Yeah. You know, it wasn't just for a grade in itself. I have a PhD in comparative literature. My research was on technology and literature, but historical, the typewriter. But I have a broad interest in the history of writing and writing technologies. And that led to me teaching myself the programming. So, you know, I'm a self-taught programmer right now. Yeah, it can be. It's a lot of work, really, especially when you're going to end up teaching it, because you obviously need to be a few steps ahead of wherever the students are going to be. My advice, I think, would be to look for a way where the tools might actually transform your teaching and how you go about introducing students and exploring issues with them versus treating it as a kind of extension of or another layer to maybe what you were already doing. I know that, at least from my experience, it's been really fascinating. I've never taught a class like this before, and that so intensively involves technical skills. And it's been interesting in that it's really changed the way that I'm imparting things to students and expanding ideas for them, because things are coming up through concrete problem solving. In this case, students have trouble with a line of code, and it sort of leads to a discussion of the principles in the code and also the bigger issues that we've been talking about. I found that really rewarding, so I would encourage others to do that, even if it is a bit more, it seems a bit more adventurous or more than you might want to attempt. It can be really, really rewarding, I think.